taking a chance on something that I'm sure you've never heard of before. And so I'm going to go ahead and we will record.
Oh, it's been recording. Yeah.
It's on recording. So maybe we never stopped recording from our last room. That's so. As a brief overview, the idea behind villaging, like I said, is where are we going to go? I used to live in co-housing in Seattle. So, we created an intentional community. I have, through that network, talked to people in eco villages, which used to be my dream. I spent a month at Twin Oaks, which is a commune in Virginia that, is off grid and self-sufficient. And now I live in the suburbs. And I'm like, I think I'm just going to stay here. and when you think about it, we can't all abandon where we are and go create utopia somewhere else. So how do we create not utopia, but how do we create the better world, the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible, which I totally stole from Charles Eisenstein, right where we are. And for me, I look at this whole village structure, which requires some humility on our part. How have people lived for really thousands of years? And what is kind of an archetype of that would serve us in the present and in the future? And so it's one thing that I have looked at through all these explorations is it's not just about simplify your living or live with less. There's like a culture and a structure around that. There's so many different ways to dive into this. And what I thought I would do today is share a few ways of thinking that have inspired this. So let's see what I set up 4 hours ago, if I can find a share screen, and I'll just to help kind of guide us through the introduction, if that's okay with everyone. Let's see. We're probably seeing introductions and everything I have open. And I can see you. All right. Being so many people showed up, we're not going to go around the room because we are keeping a little, but when you have a chance to talk later, just go ahead and introduce yourself. So the idea of villaging is to inspire a appreciation for this simpler way of life. And like Nancy said from Bolivia, people still live this way all over the world. It's just not familiar to us in the US as much. We'll talk mostly today about neighborhood villaging, bringing this kind of mindset and way of living into where you are now. And I have a big dream about, wow, wouldn't it be wonderful if developers started to integrate this into how they designed new communities? But we're not even there yet. So we're going to talk a little bit about challenging mindsets when we think about where to go. And the first one is this idea that modern equals Western. And if you've watched anything from Local Futures or Pachamama, or you'll hear people who live in traditional villages or neighborhoods, and they have a love of that. Yes, they want better modern medicine. Yes, they want some electricity. But, you hear a wistfulness too. They go back to visit their village. And so what we associate with modern, we've got those two things collapsed. And, that could be a whole hour-long seminar, but it gives you a chance to kind of let go of what that might be. What do we take forward and what do we leave behind? So the title of this was From Housing to Villaging. And we talk a lot about affordable housing, building more housing. And I realize there's something I hate about that term. And when you think about it, we don't talk about housing until we talk about kind of the Industrial Revolution. And housing is a place where you keep your workers while they're not working. And if you look at some of our neighborhoods now, what do we do there? We go to work and we come back and we're entertained until we go back to work again. And we've kind of lost a sense that people are trying to reclaim through homesteading of your house being a place where things happen, things are produced, people connect and do things together and share with each other and grow things, make things, fix things. You're living in this place. It's not a place you're housed in between. And what villaging does, if you wanted a really simple way to think of that, it's kind of like homesteading together. What if instead of trying to produce everything in your unit, you produced it with the people around you and you shared some of those resources, some of the work. The third thing that is different about villaging is your idea about community organizing. And let's see what I have next. All right. This isn't a movement that tells people, let's go build a village where we're at. It's not having an end in mind. It's making connections one at a time to see what kind of network emerges. And so it doesn't start with meetings. It doesn't start with like-minded people. And this gets its own slide, because when you think about a future where some of our systems have broken down, will there be red and blue gardens in your neighborhood? Will you be helping people based on whether they're environmentalist or not, whether they're in the same, have the same political views, values, religion? No, you have to connect just because they're your neighbors. And so that's going to be a little bit challenging to think about. It is, I've hinted at this, it's kind of emergent. It's led by action. Instead of meetings, you start doing things. And as you do things, you invite people to join you. And the goal really is to create connections, not to have a certain way that your neighborhood's going to look like your view of a village. You'll see more of that. What is a friend and neighbor? We think about doing things with our friends, but your neighbors and friends are not, don't have to be the same thing. You don't have to be friends and have get along, be super outgoing. It's really how to create connections. How to be a good neighbor is different than how to be a good friend. And being able to weed a garden together, being able to check in on each other, being respectful in certain ways. You redefine that link between what is a neighbor. And it's more of a loose connection, like people talk about on LinkedIn or Facebook. There's this different set of criteria for being a good neighbor than a friend. And you may not even know that much about each other, but there's certain things you do together in your neighborhood village. So how does all this happen? A main piece of this is you're connected by doing and by sharing. And the premise is we rely so much on social connection to hold us together. And I don't think that's going to be enough to grow a village. And when you work together on something, you build a different kind of connection. In one sense, it's maybe not as deep because you don't know each other's hearts and souls, maybe. But in another sense, it's a little bit stronger because you've learned to rely on each other regardless of what else is going on. Next is the myth of independence. Villaging, when we're in our homes and we don't have to borrow anything from our neighbor or work with our neighbor, we're told that, oh, we're being independent, neither a lender or borrower being. And not only is that a really lonely life, but it's just not true. In there is a follow-up longer, like hour and a half workshop you can come to next, I think it's next Tuesday, where we have a lot more time to talk about this. But I call that castling. Your home is your castle, and you don't need anything from anyone around you. But in reality, that means you get everything from this industrial system. You are completely dependent on it. And it is the filter to every good thing that comes from the earth and from other people. And villaging is a way to build more direct connections and sidestep this complete dependence. A lot of times when we start talking about villaging, people are like, oh yes, I have my tomatoes, you have your bike fixing, and we can do a local economy and have local currency. And this is really an opportunity instead to think about just giving stuff away, just sharing your time, creating a real gift economy. And when you do a favor or give something that's not paid back in a currency, there's a link there that is like a two-way link where you're now looking for opportunities to pay that back with another good deed or to pay that forward to somebody else. So you can see the difference. When it's paid, it's done. Your relationship is over. When it's shared or gifted, the relationship is still open. How do you look at what is community space? This is a big thing as you're looking at turning your neighborhood into a village. You can go to, right now, I love these movements where people are creating community gardens. How far away is your community garden? How are you getting the land for that community garden? This is an opportunity to redefine your front yard as community space. That median strip that you're not allowed to plant in, claim it back. Start planting there until somebody tells you not to. I had a great project someone was telling me about where they had kids plant pumpkins in that median strip. And so by Halloween, the kids all got to harvest their pumpkins. So I am going to do that in my neighborhood next year. And if somebody comes around to tell me not to do that, I'm going to take all the pictures of these cute little kids and their pumpkins to that meeting where they're trying to stop me and say, really, really, this is what you're against? So that, and you can see that then community activism comes out of the need that you've created in your community. You're not starting with, oh, let's go and change this rule about where we can plant things. You're starting with planting things and seeing where you come up against resistance. And that's where you aim your community action. So this slide probably should have been at the beginning. What is villaging in place? So it starts with the vision of this started for me walking around my neighborhood during COVID. And I discovered that I'm like walking 1.5 miles every day in a circle around my neighborhood. And I thought, and I did see more people during COVID. It was wonderful. People started coming out. They were sitting on their porches. They had nowhere else to go, nothing else to do. And so we would see each other, but we didn't really know each other. And even if you could remember their names, it's like, what's my connection with this person? Besides, you have a dog, I like dogs, we live in the same neighborhood. So I started to think about, what if I was walking around this neighborhood and this guy down here is a home brewer and he's got in his garage an opportunity to come by and try some homebrew. And I know over here, these folks, they bake bread every Tuesday and cookies every Thursday from scratch. And they're sharing that. And it's like, instead of driving to Starbucks during my walk, I could stop and have tea here or coffee there, cookies, with these people. And so I started to look at my neighborhood differently. And then to build up, it reminds me, like, what do you need in a village, a traditional village? And we talk about that later a little bit more. It's, it's the next slide. But anyway, so then there's skills. You develop the skills. I'm calling them living skills. They're a lot like homesteading skills. They're working with your hands. And what that does is connect you to your own power, and your own power to connect to not just being a consumer, not being passively entertained, but being a producer, a creator. And I think we're naturally designed to be creators. And one piece of evidence for that is in our free time, our hobbies are the things that people used to do for survival. Growing things, making things, sewing. It's so integral to us that we won't stop doing it. Now then, how do you take that out of your house and link to other people? And that's the whole piece of Connected by Doing. Invite your neighbor to share in your garden space. Say they have a north plot and your house faces south. You have a balcony in your apartment and they don't. Invite them to do something together. Have a bread baking on Sunday morning with just one other person. But as that person connects to you, I like the tomato example. You grow those tomatoes with somebody else in your neighborhood knows how to can, and you all get together to do the canning. And then somebody else who makes pasta from scratch says, wow, we could have a potluck with things just from our neighborhood. And then more and more people get brought in. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm so sorry that I talked the whole time. All right, well, so what I leave you with is to think about what you think of as a village and how you might put that into your own thinking. And I invite you to come to villaging.us and learn a little bit more about how this works, and come next Tuesday night to a Zoom call, and you will have a chance to talk and interact about the things that inspire you about this and how you can actually bring this into wherever you live, whether it's an apartment, a house, townhouse, or wherever you can connect. And I hope that was enough to get your mind engaged in a different way of thinking about where you live and community organizing